Kris is a game developer, husband, and dad from Jakarta, Indonesia. An advocate for games in Southeast Asia and founder of Toge Productions, Kris both creates and fosters game making in the region through programs such as the Toge Games Fund Initiative. Kris, over to you.
Thank you, Mads, for that nice introduction. So that was a great talk, by the way, like really good. So today I'm gonna share a little bit about my story of how I started in game industry and then built my own studio, and maybe it will give some insight for you guys to, I don't know, maybe build your company or whatever, and be sustainable in the game industry. So sprouting up. So these are the things I've learned from cultivating and growing indie game studios in Indonesia and maybe Southeast Asia as well. Okay, so warning, there will be traces of survivorship bias in this presentation because everybody's situation, circumstances might be different, and sometimes it might not work for you, but I believe there are things that we could use or not use. Basically, things that can help you maximize your chances of success. So proceed with caution. A little bit about myself. I'm founder of Toge Productions, and I've been in the indie game development scene for 15 plus years, and also now in games publishing for around 7 years. And I founded this company called Toge, which Toge actually means bean sprout. And it is a indie game developer and publisher now based in Indonesia. And we started in 2009. And here are some of the games that we've made. We have like top-down shooters, strategy games, and Coffee Talk, and A Space for the Unbound, which is a more like narrative-driven games. But this is not how I started. So, and in the beginning, so maybe a bit too far, but yeah. So a long time ago, when I was probably 7 or 8 years old, my parents bought me, like Nintendo for the first time, and I played, I guess Super Mario Brothers. It kind of blew my mind. So that's me and my brother. And I was the one playing. My brother only had like the controller, but it's not plugged in. So he's like, but he's having fun. So I don't exactly remember what blew my mind playing, Nintendo. Probably Mario hitting the bricks with his head. And I was like, oh, But then, it got me into games, and I feel like, oh, games can tell you stories, give you experiences, things that you might not, find in real life, but it can help you. Like I learned a lot of history by playing Medal of Honor. I don't know if it's actually accurate, but kind of helps. And I also learned like business management and running a company from a game called I don't exactly remember, but it's like a tycoon game where you run like a company. So I learned a lot from games, but then I wondered like why there are no games from Indonesia. So since then, like I want to create my own games, and then try to tell my stories or the stories from Indonesia. And so I went to uni, and at the time when I was in high school, I love making comics, so I know how to draw, like stuff like that. And then I thought, if I want to be a game developer, I already know how to make the art, so I need to learn the coding. So I took computer science in Indonesia, and just to learn to make games. And on my second year, I was very lucky that the uni made like what do you call it, like a collaboration with a uni in Australia, where you have you can spend a year in Australia to learn game development. And it was like, oh yeah, that's it. That's my path to the game industry, and I want to make games. So I took that And I met with my co-founder, which is that one. His name is Sudarmin. So turned out we have like the same passion in games. So we wanted to make our own games, and then we kind of worked well together. And we studied there in the uni for 1 year. And I was not the smartest student or like the most skilled. So when I barely passed my classes, and when we like graduated, like I tried to send applications to all the game studios in Australia, and none of them replied back. So I was like, kind of like I have to go back to Indonesia because like, no company replied my submissions. So yeah, after graduating, I come back to Indonesia and try to start my own game studio or like game development. And back then in Indonesia, we didn't have any like big game companies. So we tried to make like kind of like a small team, and we make Flash games because that was like the only thing available to us at the time. There was no like Unity or like Unreal back then. Was like you couldn't afford it, so the only thing that's available was Flash games. And at first we worked with other companies to do games for them, like kind of like an outsourcing thing, and make like ads, I guess like ads games, if you remember back in the 2000s. But then we decided to let's make our own company and then make our own games. We kind of like we get tired of like working on other people's games, and we want to focus on our own Flash games. But then the challenges were we didn't have any experience. No, never made or launched like a commercial game before, and then we had no money. We were like poor. I only probably have like 3 million rupiah, was like maybe $300 in my bank account, and so we didn't have any. There's like no investors, no funding grants at all in Indonesia, so we had to kind of like figure it out ourselves. And a lot of people, I guess like everybody in Indonesia, pirate games. So selling games in Indonesia is not an option, and we didn't have any network in the game industry, so there was like no ecosystem in Indonesia at the time, and there were like no support, not even from our own family. Like I guess a typical like Asian family is like you got to be a doctor or like a lawyer or something, and if you want to make games, it doesn't count as like a career. So no support from the government, no grant, no support from the family, and society in general in Indonesia is like kind of have a negative perception towards games because they think games are all games are bad. So that is like the condition that we had to be in, and then try to survive and try to make games. It's not the best place, but we still want to make our own games, but we didn't, we have no idea what we were doing. So so we started thinking about our company name, Toge, which actually in Indonesia it means bean sprout. And our company name was actually a joke when we were like studying in Australia in our final year project. We had to make like a team, and because like the team was all Indonesians, so we had like, what's a cool name for our team that might sound exotic, and was like, ooh, Toge might sound like Tuj, Tugi, like it's exotic. So yeah, but we didn't think a lot about it. But then when we are like starting to make a company, we had to like start thinking about our philosophy. What is this company about? And so that when we're pitching to like publishers or like clients, we don't sound like totally clueless, I guess. So a bit of a disclaimer: I'm not a botanist, so please take this with a grain of salt. But bean sprouts is basically they start small, right? And then they adapt to the environment, and then it grows. into hopefully something good. And so starting small is basically, like Hugh said, like making tiny games. Like when we're like starting our own like company or like team or studio and games, sometimes we try to make a game that's like too ambitious for the, in the beginning. And just like many game developers, we had like a huge dream of, the game that we wanted to make. But you have to imagine that your big dream game is like Mount Everest, right? And everybody knows that you cannot just like go to Mount Everest and then climb it. You'll probably die, right? So not only you need like preparation, planning, practice, but you need to know your limits, what's possible, what's not possible to do, and then the risks involved. Sadly, we didn't know that at the beginning. So we didn't have a big budget, so we tried to do our best with our constraints. We focus on, short and tight game loops that people can play, repeatedly, like high replayability, and try to cut everything, so make it like very simple. Even after like cutting everything, because I only have like $300 in my bank account, so I have to start eating Indomie for months just to stretch our budget. I wouldn't recommend starving yourself on your first game, but yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do. So we were lucky that no one got hurt. So this is Infectonator. This is not my first game. So this is the dream that my first game would look like. That was like, oh yeah, I wanna make a zombie apocalypse game where you can spread a virus and then turn people to zombies and then make a pandemic of zombie virus, kind of like a COVID simulator before COVID. So, and we thought like, how hard can it be, to make this game? And turns out having like that kind of like thinking of like how hard can it be is usually a bad sign. So we often get, overconfident or underestimate things. Even the most experienced developers still fall victim to this. And Infectonator, because it was like our first game, we had big ambitions. We wanted to be, to have like a highly detailed pixel art with smooth animations, with hundreds of cities, as levels that you can destroy. So it was like, if you're familiar with the Dunning-Kruger effect, so I was up there, like right over there. So very high confidence without any knowledge. But then, reality check slapped in my face. And after making, so this is what I end up with for our first game. So after trying to make that pixel art animation, and after making like one character, and I thought like, oh shit, I have to make 8 or like so many directions with so many frames. So I decided to kind of like cut down everything and make it like super, super easy, super small. And fast, right? So basically, I realized that I didn't have the skill or to tackle the scope of the quality, so I was like forced to simplify. And at the time, we didn't have any asset stores or like plugins available to us, so we have to make everything ourselves. But I think it kind of helped me overcome the Dunning-Kruger effect quickly, because you have to do it, and then oh shit, now I have a point of reference of like, oh, this is my skill right now, and that is like my dream. So it's like, oh shit, so far away. So if you're just starting, beware that you need to know your limitation, and sometimes like asset stores and plugins that you buy might kind of give you like a false sense of like competence, I think. So you will tend to overscope, and you might feel good, like, oh yeah, this looks good because you're using like assets available in the store, but you might not realize that you are, and that Dunning-Kruger effect kind of like what do you call it, curve. So we ended scoping down and then turn it into like a million tiny games. Shit. So. He already made that talk, so I'm not gonna explain about it. So basically, we make this crappy game, release it into the wild. And the good thing is like we got feedback. So that is actually a really good thing. Scoping down, starting small, making small games, and then just releasing it, and then you'll get feedback from people from all over the world, and then you can use that to kind of like improve yourself and then grow, and then make more games better. So it allowed us to be productive and keep morale high, because like we release a game every month, and then we can see how it progresses. More people download or like play it online, and then we can see we get more feedback. And by doing this, like instead of like making like one big game in like a year, we ended up with like multiple games, maybe like 12 games in a year. So we get more revenue that way, and that in turn made us more sustainable, because now we have like a passive income that can sustain the development for bigger game. And so the games actually can be used as like like a stepping stone. So every game that we make after that is like an improvement, or like an expansion of the previous game. And then we didn't realize it at the time that it was actually what we were doing was failing fast, failing forward mindset. So it's kind of like after I don't know how many games, but these 2 games actually use the same kind of like code base and even like similar assets, but we're just like changing it to different themes. So we reuse what we have, and then we iterate, and then we experiment on new ideas. And by doing this, we can make a lot more game faster, and then continuously improve on that, and then build on top of it. So small steps and continuous iteration. The important thing here is like when you're making games, when you feel like, oh, this is gonna be bad, don't throw it away. Just if you feel it's too big, just rescope it, but you have to finish it, and then you put it out. Because if you don't release that in whatever state it is, you won't actually learn from your game, because you won't get people's feedback. But if you do, just even though it's bad, don't worry about it. Just put it out, and then you can start getting feedback, and then you can use that to to improve yourself further. And not only that, making small games and then building on top of it is that you're building your skill and knowledge, and then you're also building your fan base, because eventually after you're making several games, you'll start to see kind of like your signature. So there's gonna be a pattern. So and people will love that, and then they will recognize you for, oh, this is his game, or like their game, by looking at the graphics or like the theme or whatever. And then you're building your passive income, and you're building your resource library, so that you can make bigger games, or like faster. If you're familiar with a team called Sockpop, they're a very good example of this, and I would highly recommend checking them out. So basically, it looks something like this. So instead of like just straight climbing Mount Everest, you're actually practicing and building up your skills by just going through, climbing a hill, and then after you're over that, you're climbing a bigger hill, and then you're climbing a mountain, and then a bigger mountain. So each game release will get you closer to your dream game. And after you manage to reach your dream game, you're gonna have like a bigger dream game. So you just repeat that process and have that milestone to get yourself to the top. And we also realized, after making several games, that it's important not just to build your technical skills, but also finding and building your audience, and making yourself stand out, with each game that you release. So we start adding our own signature twists in our games, like adding local culture from Indonesia as is Easter eggs into our games. And there's an Indonesian saying that tak kenal maka tak sayang, which means like roughly translates to like don't know, don't care. So it means like if people don't know about it or like they don't know what it is or like the culture, they don't care, right? So they don't care what they don't know. So we try to leverage something that's universally recognizable or like familiar, and then subtly inserting our local culture in the background, and then slowly introducing that more as the game progresses. And that is like one way for us to build our, I guess, our own signature, our own like, so this is, what Toge's game is about, like something like that. So when you're making your, when you're making games, eventually you'll start finding your own signature, and having that signature will help you greatly in the future. So, however, when things are going well for us, it took a drastic turn. So in, I guess, 2012, Steve Jobs said like they're not gonna support Flash anymore in all the mobile devices, and we're dead. But we don't want to just close our studio. We want to go out fighting, right? So this is sadly this is something that will always happen in the game industry. Game industry is very volatile. Like recently, we have like a lot of layoffs, and Unity changed their like business policies or like stuff like that. Companies going bankrupt, and yeah, basically it's a lot of bad things that it happens in the past and it will continue to happen in the future. So my advice here is that never place your future in the hands of other big corporations. So we have to be always adapting. And so this leads to our Toge philosophy is adapting is, you have to allow existential flexibility. So you don't want, like if, for example, like you're using Flash and then suddenly Flash is killed. If you don't have a way to pivot or like to change, find other ways to make it, I guess, you'll be forced to close down, right? And so you have to take back control of for your own destiny, and we have to prepare. Hopefully you can prepare some safety net so you can bounce back when shit hits the fan. And to do this, there are two things that you can do. One is make room for mistakes, so that you have time to pivot when things happen. And this can be financial buffer, but it can also be other things, such as making time to do experiments, so that allowing yourself to fail safely when you're doing experiments, so that if you fail, it's okay. But if you found out that through this experiment you found something new that's interesting and might potentially be a big hit or something like that, that's a bonus, right? So explore new things from time to time to push yourself out of your comfort zone, and so that you know where you can pivot to if anything happens. So this is what we do in Toge. We also do game jams. We try to force ourselves to do more like exhibitions to other events, including to like PAX Australia, so that we kind of like know like what are the possibilities around us. Basically explore the unknown, right? So that you know what's there. And sometimes it will lead you to something great. So Coffee Talk, for example, is a result of an internal game jam in our studio. And it was our first narrative-driven game. And it was completely different from our past games. And it didn't reuse any of our existing assets. It has completely different target audience. So basically, it's like kind of like starting from zero. But so making Coffee Talk would definitely kill our studio if we didn't prepare, make room for mistakes. But we wouldn't be as successful as today if we didn't take the risk. So when we're making Coffee Talk, it was, we thought it was going to be like a short and simple visual novel game that we can finish in less than 6 months. And in reality, we shipped the game after 2 years of development, and we nearly ran out of money because we thought, how hard can writing dialogue can be, right? And that almost killed our studio, basically. But fortunately, we already prepared, some money saved up, and we have other projects in the pipeline, so we kind of like have that buffer. So if Coffee Talk fails, then we're gonna be okay. We can pivot to other things. But because we took that risk, turns out Coffee Talk was like one of our, not one of the best, or like the most successful game that we made so far, and we're glad that we took that risk. Another way to adapt and have existential flexibility is by forming communities. And your safety net can be, in the form of the people around you. So like forming support groups and collaborations can kind of like create that safety net as well. And I saw the talk from like Sabi yesterday. I think you guys already got this covered as well. So I don't know why I'm here. Like, you guys have it, all things covered. So yeah, so growing together growth can sound a bit cringy nowadays, because a lot of corporations use that to describe financial growth. But growth is not just about profits, right? It's also, or not just like profits or number of users, but it can also be like personal growth in your skills, in your knowledge, and the maturity, as a person. And that is, if you want to be, I guess, sustainable, keep making games, then we need to grow as a person as well, so that we can be better, make more games. So in the past in Indonesia, the one of the catalysts in like the Indonesian game development scene was that we have this Flash game sponsorship back in like the early 2000s, where small developers without money can make small games and earn a living by selling, getting the sponsorship. And it gave birth to a lot of Southeast Asian game developers. It allowed us to learn and grow. Sadly, it's gone. So we like when Flash was killed, like a lot of the the developers, they had to like pivot to other platforms, like making mobile games or Steam. I guess we were lucky at the time. Steam also opened Steam Greenlight, so we took that risk as well to try new platforms. And back then, like a lot of there were like a lot of online communities like Newgrounds. And in Indonesia, we have Indonesian game, I guess like forum. So there we met, with people that have the same kind of passion, and we learn from each other. We share our knowledge, experiences, and we give tips and tricks on how to, improve your game or like sell better or whatever. And it's kind of like, I scratch your back, you scratch my back kind of thing. And so Flash game communities help the Indonesian game developer flourish and grow. And when Flash was killed, so we were like one of the studios that have the privilege to help other studios. So we created to not only we create collaborations, and we start funding other developers' projects and giving them tips and tricks. And then we start realizing that, like we're kind of turning to a publisher, because at the time there were like no Indonesian publishers, and Indonesian game developers have to pitch to international publishers, and most of the time they get rejected because like we're nobodies from Indonesia. Like we have no like a success track record or something like that. So I was like, okay, fuck it, I'm gonna be a publisher myself and then help other studios. So after a while of doing that, so we decided to kind of like accelerate other studios because Indonesia doesn't have, the government doesn't have grants. So we created our own grants. So we created Toge Games Fund Initiative, where we give out like $10,000 to indie developers starting their own games, and we didn't take any, what do you call it, like there's no strings attached, almost, I guess. They keep their IP, there's no equity taken, and they don't have to pay back the $10,000. And the goal is just to create a prototype or like a vertical slice where they can put that out as a demo or something to promote their, if they decide to make a bigger game, a more commercial game, they can use that as the promo or demo, and then they can validate their ideas. And then we also give them mentorship and guidance. And what we ask, the only thing that we ask is like right of refusal for the game, the full game, and if we're interested, we can offer them publishing deal. But out of like I think we've funded like 20 games, so we rejected all of them just so that we can let them go into the wild. So basically, we're like giving the money, the right for first refusal is just so that when we give them money, they don't run away. So it's kind of like, but then when they're finished, then you can go. So in total, we have like maybe like 18 games from 5 countries in Southeast Asia that has participated in TGFI, and 10 of them has graduated, and they are free to find their own publishers, or if they want to self-publish. And hopefully by doing this, we create a safety net, and then kind of like a community where they can grow and learn and grow. And yeah, so it's like planting and growing new seeds in Southeast Asia. And so recently we started seeing more developers from Southeast Asia, especially in Indonesia, making splashes internationally. And this did not happen overnight, right? So this is like a very long process of slow, consistent growth. But if we can, keep helping, if you're, new, if they're new, we start small, but we gave them like the guidance, help, and then to grow, then we can grow together. So I guess like in the end, it's like maybe this is something that I can give you is like the bean sprout principle, is that you start small, and then always adapt, and whatever your situation, you find your unfair advantage, and then use that, and then you can grow together with your communities, and make yourself sustainable and keep making games. So I guess in the end, it's like if we want to keep making games, we have to be helping each other. Thank you. Do we need to do like questions or? Yeah, I guess we still have time. So if there's any questions, feel free.
Hi. Hello? Yeah. Hi, Southeast Asian fellows here from Thailand.
Nice.
So I was just wondering, like, it's so motivating to hear, like, this part of the world has, like, ventured into the game development world. I'm new to game development personally, so was wondering, like, if you ever fund any project from Thailand, or how's the scene there, and compare Southeast Asia to Australia. Do you see any difference or anything?
Yeah, I met with a few game developers from Thailand. They're actually pretty awesome, pretty good. And I guess like the difference is like in Southeast Asia, I guess like a lot of the government and the mindset is like games are bad, right? And basically Asian parents, they want you to have like a stable, official, formal job, right? So it's, I guess, like most of the challenges, like trying to convince them or like to show them that this can be a sustainable career path as well. And it's not just making what do you call it, like games that brought your brain, but it can also, you can show that games are actually can be educational. It can be, it can be many things. I guess like that is one of the challenges. And the game industry in Southeast Asia is still very young, right? Compared to like Australia, I think like Australia, you already have like a lot of the structure, and then the sport available, and they're more established. But I guess like one of the advantages, maybe like in Southeast Asia, the living cost is like a lot cheaper. So we can kind of like, with the same budget, we can stretch it out for a longer period. So we can, kind of like make more games, or like in a, in a smaller budget. So that might be one of the way that it can grow faster. Yeah. But there's a lot of opportunities actually in Southeast Asia. And I keep seeing like a lot of cool games coming from Thailand, from Philippines, like Malaysia. So I guess like the game scene is it's growing. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Yeah.
Hello. So earlier you said it's generally not a good idea to put your future in the hands of a AAA company. But would it still be a good idea to start out in one, just so you have some stability and so you gain some experience?
Yes, that's a very very good question. So basically, it's not that we have to kind of like reject them completely, because like, yeah, like for us, we're still using Unity. Like they're basically things, in the game industry that's, you kind of like, they're already things that are already established. So you can always learn from these, like AAA companies, or like use tools that are already available. But I guess like try to be aware that, are you too dependent on that, or is there a way that you can kind of like, what if things, something bad happens, what can be your, I guess like exit strategy, or like pivot point? So because like a lot of people, when back then, like a lot of people are too dependent on like one platform, and then suddenly that platform was gone because the decision of like one company, and then they don't have anything to kind of like pivot to. So that is a big risk that you just need to be aware of. Yeah.
I've got a question here. Hi, Kris.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the talk. That was such a pleasure to listen to your journey in game development. My question is, as it's such a thing in Australia, we often get asked like, what does an Australian game look like? What does it feel like? We're often asked to describe what makes a game Australian or Melburnian. I'm really curious to know from your perspective if you feel like there's anything particular about games coming out of Indonesia or Southeast Asia that really sort of stick out to you from your perspective.
Yeah, I think a lot of the Indonesian games, basically we tried to kind of like show our like daily life, I guess. Like it doesn't need to be, like for example, like a completely cultural game. So it can be as simple as, like in Indonesia, a lot of people wear hijab, for example, or there's a lot of Gojek, like the motorcycle, what do you call it, like taxis, yeah. So just having that, and then making like kind of like showing the daily lives, or like things that are very, I don't know how to say it, like feels very Indonesian, like what Indonesians see or feel every day. It could be as simple as that. Yeah, and usually what we see games that deliver that kind of like cultural aspect the best is that they don't put it like too much like in your face. It's more like, so this is something that, you know, a game that you're familiar with, but then there's something in the background that's, oh, that's unique, you know, and then slowly kind of like bringing that forward, I guess. So yeah, I guess like for like Australian culture, it could be like, you know, whatever you feel like it's very Australian, you know, something that's very Aussie, or yeah, it doesn't need to be like super cultural. It just like, yeah, it can be like your daily life. Yeah. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Okay. Something I found really interesting about your talk was, you know, how your parents kind of disowned you, and you have to sort of like,
Yeah.
like you didn't get the support from like Asian parents because, you know, Asian parents want your future to be like stable, and you got to be a doctor and stuff. I could say for myself and possibly a few other people here that like we're also dealing with some of that sort of pushback, and I wanted to ask you, like, how did you deal with that pushback? How did you persevere beyond the cultural sort of pessimism that, like, you know, us Asians and our culture, you know, has?
Yeah. Okay. So this might be my survivor bias, but at the time I was kind of like, "Fuck you, Dad," you know, like, I'm gonna keep making my own game, and then like so my co-founder, so basically I got kicked out from my house because basically my dad said, like, you know, you got to find a job, like a proper job, or, you know, stop playing in front of the computer, or basically get out of the house. So basically, okay, no problem. I just moved to my, you know, co-founder's garage, and that's how we started the company. But maybe not everybody can have that kind of like, I guess, privilege or like, you know, lucky. So I guess you have to find, like, first you have to find the courage to kind of like, yeah, this is what I want to do, and then maybe, you know, just pursue it. And then if you get kicked out of the house, then try to find a way to kind of like survive and make games. I guess like I was very lucky that my saving, that $300, kind of like sustained me for like 3 months so that we can finish our first game. And then that first game got like $3,000 from like a Flash sponsorship. So that becomes a profit, and then we can grow from there. But I guess, yeah, there is always risks. So having friends, like I told you, like, you know, growing together. So friends, you know, support group outside of your family that actually can support you pursuing what you want, that can help you. And then once you made it, and then you can come back to your dad or like your mom or whatever and say like, hey, you know, yeah, I made it, you know, I'm a CEO, bitch. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but I guess that's my survivorship bias, right? Can we get in the one in front?
Hi.
Okay, yeah.
Your talk was amazing.
Thank you.
The fact that you're able to grow from making Flash games in the garage to being able to fund and give $10,000 to games of your choice and help them flourish is amazing. I would love to be able to do that one day, but I don't know with Australia, or I guess the current market in our current time where things are very expensive and we don't have as much, I don't want to say opportunity, but I want to be able to do that. Do you think it's something that's still possible or should even still be done in Melbourne's context, I guess, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think it is, you know, it's still possible. We keep seeing, for example, like, if you look at Steam and the games that are becoming successful, time and time again, we keep seeing games being developed by a single person or like a small team becoming successful, right? So it is definitely possible. So I guess like my advice would be, you know, just start small. You don't have to kind of like pressure yourself to be like, I have to be like $10 million, you know, kind of like, it is always a long process. But if you kind of like have that, okay, so I want to, the direction that you want to go, and then try to break down that into like smaller chunks of milestone that you can, you can do action, actionable, that you can progress. So for example, just like make 30 games, tiny games. Maybe from that 30 games, like each game make $1 a month, and it becomes like $30. But it's always a process like that. But I think it's still doable. And if you want to really go down to I guess like from like a marketing, perspective and a business perspective, there are actually like plenty of ways to kind of like increase your chances of success. And maybe it's not going to be in this talk, but there's a lot of things that you can learn from other people's talk about, like the best genre, or like those like marketing strategies and stuff like that. Maybe you can talk after this. Yeah.
We'll do one more. So.
Thank you. Hello.
Yeah.
Hi, fellow Malaysian, Southeast Asian. Just wanted to ask, because you've said that your team was making games catered towards more global than your local scene. Would you, I guess the question would be like, do you think there is inherent push towards making more global themes than making local themed games to approach like an audience, basically?
Okay. So I guess this one depends on like the business strategy, or like like the target audience of your team. So for example, like in like today, I guess like the market of like in Indonesia that appreciates indie games, it's growing. So for our latest game, like Space for the Unbound, for example, like the what do you call it? The #1 region, like the top selling region, is actually Indonesia, and it's like probably like 30% of the sales is from Indonesia. But it's a long process. So to get there, we have to kind of like build our brand, build our reputation first, so that people when they look at Toge, they feel like, oh yeah, they're good, But if I go back, like for example, like 10 years ago, and then straight up make a game for Indonesian market, they will probably think, look, and all Indonesian games are bad, like why would I buy that? I just buy Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed or whatever, right? So you kind of like have to build that trust first. And for us, a way to do that is like, because we couldn't target our local market because of that, what do you call it, like a perception. So we kind of like broaden our market, our audience, by going global. But then after like 15 years, then people start, yeah, Toge's games are good. And then like now now when we put out a game, like the local fan base are already waiting for it. But that is not something that's instant, right? So it's something that takes time. But I've also have like other friends who are purposely targeting local market as well, and they also made it. But their approach is completely different, right? So for example, like they made more like mobile games that are free and more accessible. So that kind of like reduced the barrier of kind of like entry, I guess, for people to try. So there are many ways to do it, but you have to kind of like, I guess, like understand what's the audience, like, yeah, their mindset and stuff like that. So yeah. Yeah. Cool. Thank you.